my first exposure to Indian music ever was a Shakti record. I guess my first exposure to Indian music as a kid was through Shakti, which is, of course, not like classical Indian music. It's a fusion, but it was like the first time that I heard the textures of the instruments, and of course, when I got into Hendrix and like the whole kind of 60s scene, like, you know, Ravi Shankar, Monterey, you know, that whole thing. But I would say that I interacted with it in a very kind of peripheral way. It wasn't a huge part of my listening diet until college, and then I started getting into kind of Hindustani and Carnatic music and checking out Ghazal, and then, of course, once I met Vadi, then I got a lot more interested in it, and it wasn't really until I worked on her record, the months leading up to it, where I was doing research on the tradition, that I really started to feel like I was gaining some kind of understanding of what's going on. I mean, very, very, very superficial understanding, obviously, because it's such a deep art form, but yeah, I would say it's pretty recent. And of course, the things that I learned making that record, I mean, they're a part of who I am now as a musician. I don't think anybody unlearns something that they learn. Every experience we have kind of stays in our backpack, and we carry it with us everywhere we go.
1, 2, 3, 4.
There's never been more power in the hands of the artist than now. You don't need a record label to be able to have people hear your music. You don't need a big distributor. I mean, you can just go direct from your bedroom to streaming platforms and have people hear it. So that's very advantageous. It also means that there's a lot more music out there that you have to kind of fight through for people to hear. But I do believe that the most interesting stuff floats to the top. So when people ask me, like, how do I become more successful, or how do I become more visible? I mean, I always say, like, don't worry about becoming successful or visible, and just worry about making good music, because that's going to attract people to you, and they're going to spread the word for you. So I would just encourage anybody that has the desire to make independent music to just do it. Do it the best you can and put it out there. You know, don't be overly networky, but don't be like a hermit. You know, just be true to yourself and to the message that you want to convey artistically, and try to do it in the best way possible.
That's just nothing, you know?
Yeah, when it comes to writing in odd time signatures, I actually do it the opposite way than the way that you asked, which is like, how do you make an odd time signature feel comfortable? I don't say I want to write a song in 7. Okay, how do I make it comfortable? I think the things that I write in odd times are comfortable because they came about naturally. Like, I sang it that way for the first time, not trying to write it in an odd time. Or sometimes I think it's in 4, and then once I start to put it into logic or something, then I realize, oh, that's not in 4 actually. I mean, I've never set out with a goal of writing in an odd meter. It's just a thing that happens naturally when you listen to music in odd meters. So it should be comfortable.
It's not connected. And I left no space. I left no space for me to listen to what I did.
Yeah, I mean,
Right?
I've had
my improv teacher when I was
the luxury and the,
at the University of North Texas said,
you know, the privilege to be able to experience a lot of different music from around the world, and a lot of different musicians, and a lot of different musical cultures. Not nearly 1% of those that exist on Earth, but a lot. And I mean, I think just like with anything else, the more you learn about things that are different from what you are familiar with, the more you see familiarity in everything. It becomes kind of like your worldview just suddenly accommodates different people's worldviews. So in that way, I think you become a more empathetic person in a lot of respects. You know, I remember when I first started traveling, I used to be like, oh wow, in this country they do blah, 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 that's so weird. You know, I can't remember the last time that I said it was so weird that someone does something in a country, you know, but at the beginning when I was traveling, that's how I thought. That's so strange. It's actually not strange at all to them. It's only strange to me because I'm not coming from that place, right? And you can use an example like as simple as like the way people drive in India, right? It's like very different from the way people drive in Europe or in the US. So for me, it's strange. Here, it's normal. That's a simple example of something very like a daily part of life. But then when you apply that concept in a bigger way, you start to kind of give people a little bit more grace when you're not in agreement with them, or when something is happening in a way that you don't like or you're not familiar with. You start to kind of like understand, oh, you know, there's a system in place here that I'm unfamiliar with. And I can't interpret the way that someone is behaving if they're from another culture. I can't interpret that based on what that means in my culture, right? Like I have to try to seek to understand what that means in their culture. So that immediately makes you kind of more generous as a person and more understanding, more empathetic, and like generally just kind of like more accepting, I think. And then you take that home with you. It's not something that just goes away once you leave foreign soil and step back home. It's like, you know, I try to keep that with me wherever I go. I don't always succeed in it, but that's the idea. I would like to think that's the case. I don't know that I'm doing it on the level that I would like to be doing it. You know, everybody has their weak moments or whatever, but yeah, I mean, I feel like now I don't really look at India or Japan as like, wow, so different. Now it's just like, now sometimes I look at the US and I'm like, wow. As if it were India or Japan, as if it were that foreign to me, you know? I mean, I also don't live in the US anymore, so that kind of exaggerates how I feel about it. But definitely, I think you gain a lot of perspective just traveling in general, and you gain a lot of perspective on the world and life and people, and the fact that there is no such thing as normal. There's only normal according to a specific culture. So, yeah, it's been a blessing for me for sure. It definitely has helped shape who I am now.